Did Senator Jeff Flake do it for all the right reasons? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle now, and Bill does not know what I'm about to ask him, but I think he's got a pretty good idea at this point. Bill, we would not be having an FBI probe of Judge Brett Kavanaugh's background, especially as it regards potential acts of sexual molestation committed in the distant past, if not for Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona. He made his vote contingent upon the fact that they would conduct this FBI investigation. Now, he's been hammered from the right, but let me ask you a couple questions. Maybe we're not seeing the full orbed picture here, Bill. Is it possible that Senator Flake is doing Judge Kavanaugh a favor because by having an FBI probe at this point, it will remove the asterisk from Kavanaugh's future Supreme Court career?
Well, first of all, if that's the case, that's certainly not Flake's intention. Flake's intention to me seems to be in the spotlight. That's what he seems to be enjoying just enormously. He bears that quality in relation to the other Arizona senator who passed away recently, who liked to be seen as kind of the maverick and in the spotlight, and the whole future of the country's in his hands. I think is a very, 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 very bad call. Now, as far as the FBI investigation goes, the FBI investigation, as I understand it, the seventh one that they're doing, is actually more limited than the other six in terms of what the agents have the power to go after, and as well as the scope of it. So, is it good for Brett Kavanaugh to wait another week? I don't know, Scotty. This last 4 or 5 days, I've just felt like I just don't know what country I'm living in anymore. I wake up every day just heartbroken, and I can't put my finger on why. And then suddenly, I remember now. It's because of these filthy tricks. Flake is not to blame here, although let's just put it this way: Flake is not the instigator of this nightmare, although I think he certainly helped push it along a little and keep it going. And certainly, I believe Kavanaugh to be 100% innocent. I think Dr. Ford is. I don't know if she's telling the truth or not. Some people say she is, other people say she's not. But the one thing that I do know is that as of what I saw today, this whole thing comes down on Dianne Feinstein. All of it. Because I don't know if you saw the hearings today. I don't know if I'm cheating another question either, Scotty, but this is, to me, the whole thing.
Well, and I don't want to get too much into the particulars of where that investigation and where the Democrats are going now with their accusations. I'd rather stay focused in this episode because we're going to do another episode. But I'd like to stay focused in this one on Senator Flake. Can I ask you a follow-up question to that? Senator Flake's sort of insisting on an FBI probe could also benefit Republicans because Republicans are having a hard time in general. They have a harder time with women than Democrats do in sense of voters. Maybe it's good to say, you know what? We wanted to do this follow-up FBI investigation just to make sure that everything was good here. This could help the GOP as we go into the midterm elections because the GOP is being thorough about investigating this woman's claims.
Well, you can make a case for that with the education level and the emotional level that the country's degraded to now. I suppose you could make the case that a seventh FBI investigation of more limited scope than the original one is somehow going to be this palliative for all of these accusations. I have to tell you, and this is not an observation of mine, it's from a friend of mine, but this entire idea about talking about alleged rape and so on, there was no rape involved here. She's not claiming rape. There's nothing, there are at best misdemeanor charges on the table, assuming everything went exactly the way that she said they went. I think that you can pretty much get this whole thing summed up by something that Lindsey Graham said, who was I thought was just magnificent a couple of days ago and was very, very good last time I saw him just a day or two ago, maybe a few hours ago, I think it was, where basically Lindsey Graham has said a couple times, if this continues, it's going to keep good people out of government. And I realized the second I first heard that from him, he talks about that like it's a bug, like there's something wrong with that. When in point of fact, the entire Kavanaugh hearing, that's the entire one of the many splendid fallouts that the left gets to benefit from this, is that there will be no people of honor or integrity or character running or being involved in politics in any way, which is precisely what they want. So we find that there's some pretty interesting evidence that those two women who got on the elevator with Flake, that made Flake delay this thing for a week, were paid Soros shills. I don't have the actual evidence of that. I've heard it reported from 3 or 4 different people. Let's just say it doesn't surprise me, because I saw people at the Kavanaugh convention confirmation getting up and screaming, and then I've seen pictures of them walking out to the parking lot and receiving a check from the person that paid them to go in there and scream about women's rights. So the other thing that Lindsey Graham said, and I don't want to make this about Lindsey Graham, but the story goes where it goes, Scotty, was that there is now going to be a pre-Kavanaugh and a post-Kavanaugh standards for confirmation. Lindsey Graham said, if I become chairman of the Judiciary Committee, if they hold the Senate next year, then he's not going to forget that. So, look, I think Flake did it because, let's just say, I do not think that this was a long-seeing strategy on the part of Jeff Flake. I think Flake got, if you had to ask me to guess, it's my opinion, but if I had to guess, I would say that the same kind of people, if not the same exact people that leaked this whole thing in the first place, put 2 people in that elevator with Flake to make sure that this could be stretched out as long as possible to do as much damage as possible. I will rather concede that it is beginning to look a little bit like the Democrats may have miscalculated on this, because I'm beginning to feel every moment that the wheels are coming off of just how unethical everything the Democrats have done here really is.
Now, Senator Flake is not seeking re-election to his Senate seat from Arizona, and he was interviewed by CNN this week and told CNN that if he were seeking re-election, he would not have pushed for this FBI probe before taking the vote in the Senate. Basically, he said that in effect, he's saying that he was in opposition to the way his voters would have wanted him to vote. Now, Bill, immediately you might say, well, that's terrible. This is a representative of the people who's not representing his people. On the other hand, the original vision of the framers of the Constitution was to set the Senate at a certain remove, both in time, in the sense of their 6-year terms, as well as in the way they were selected at that time when they were originally selected through the states. The purpose of the Senate was to not get swept up in the passions of the mob. Isn't Jeff Flake merely doing the kind of thing that the framers envisioned? And Bill, aren't you an originalist when it comes to this?
I am, Scotty, and thank you for that beautifully phrased and beautifully argued devil's advocate question. And if I thought that Jeff Flake was actually doing something to cool passions and to advance reason, then I would say swell. But what Flake has done is he's allowed the lynch mob that has become Washington and the crying competition that has become what used to be the law of the land go on for another week. It's another week of heartache, another week of division, another week of recriminations. It's another week to drag other people out from the swamp. You have to admit, by the way, that given the pressure on the progressives to turn up credible witnesses against this guy, the best they can do is Dr. Ford. And by the way, Scotty, I think this needs to be, I sometimes look at what the Republicans do and I just ask myself, why am I here? The entire argument of the progressive left is the woman must be trusted every time, that the woman is right every time. That's exactly what they're saying. And how can you as a white male possibly doubt this? So in my opinion, what the Senate should have been doing is they should not have been looking into Dr. Ford's allegations first. They should have been looking into the allegations of what's her name, who said that Brett Kavanaugh was basically the host of a gang rape mastermind,
Julie
criminal
Swetnick.
mastermind. Yeah, who basically at 10 different parties drugged and then took women outside to be gang raped. Now, the reason I say this is because if they are saying that every woman needs to be believed, why don't we start with her?
Well, right before we went to record this session, Bill, I actually read a story about that, and apparently Swetnick is backing off a little bit in her claims about this. It's less about Brett Kavanaugh spiking the punch so that he can set up gang rape parties, and more about she may have seen him at a party outside a room where she thought that there was gang raping going on, but she has no direct evidence that he did any such thing.
Now you see why I'd like to have dealt with her first. Now you see why, in an age of optics, and emotion and any lack of reason, a total disregard for law. The entire thing becomes what I saw as a jury foreman, to my utter horror, just several years ago, which is that the jurors that I sat with 2 or 3 exceptions, weren't much interested in the law. They weren't much interested in the law. They were interested in who they thought told the best story. And then they were talking about conspiracies and plot reversals that you get in bad dramas and all the rest of it. The reason I would have gone on her testimony first, Scott, is because her testimony is so outrageous. It's so ridiculous. It's so obviously patently false. And not only false, but simply a little psychotic. If you had gone after her allegations first and put her to testify first and gone after her first with these ridiculous charges, any person could have seen that she's lying. Any person would watch her doing the backpedaling she's doing now, and you would have defeated the all women are always telling the truth argument before this game got started, because this person, 10 gang rape lady, is certifiable. I mean, she's certifiable. And that's what I would have done if I was dealing with this tactically. And this is what we're reduced to now. We're reduced to having film writers try and determine the best sequence of events so that we can have the most emotional influence on the American public and on senators who swore to uphold the Constitution, which doesn't even require this bloody hearing in the first place. Is that where we are now? We got to find the best screenwriters for our side to find the best way to tell this story, when in point of fact, there's not a court in the country that would have taken Dr. Ford's case. Not a prosecutor in America would have gone with that evidence, not one. The fact that there's no evidence to support it means it shouldn't have been in the Senate. And to be honest with you, Scotty, there shouldn't have been a Senate hearing anyway. As you well know, most of the senators that have served in the U.S. Congress never went through any of these hearings, never went through any of this. It started with Judge Bork when they had to do something to stop their control, to maintain their control of the Supreme Court. And that bloodbath worked against Bork, and it damn near worked against Clarence Thomas, and the vote's still out on this one.
The members at BillWhittle.com and the viewers at YouTube and elsewhere on the internet have demanded more Bill Whittle, and that's why we created Bill Whittle Now. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you click that little notification button so that you don't miss a single episode. We're now creating at least 5 episodes of this a week, and we don't want you to miss any of them. If you haven't done so yet, click on over to BillWhittle.com and see what it takes to become a member there, a citizen producer of content like this. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.